Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining me again today for this live broadcast. I'm very excited because I have Hayley Joy with me today, and we've kind of been fans of each other for a long time. So I'm super excited that I'm chatting with her today and that we can share her expertise with all of you. So, our topic of conversation today is printing on fabrics. Both Hayley and I receive quite a lot of inquiries from particularly young designers who are hoping to create their own bespoke fabrics that they can then use for their collections of garments so that they can create a collection that is really, really authentically their own, all the way from print concept to silhouette and finished garment. So, Haley and I have been answering quite a lot of questions from all of you. So, we decided that today we would put together a conversation where all of you can just learn from some of our experiences, because I think between us, Haley, we've probably got more than 50 years' experience in the clothing industry. Hey.
Yeah.
Yes, it is more than 50 years between us. Uh,
Mhm.
so um, we've got some experiences that we can share with all of you, and we're going to do that today in this broadcast. Now, I think we're just going to start with an introduction so that all of you can understand why Haley and I feel that we are the people to have this conversation and share this information with you, and also why people are contacting us to find out about this. So, Haley, if you'll just tell everybody about your experiences with printed fabrics over the last 27 or so years.
Mel, over the last 27, it's actually 35, but thank you for being. So, hello to everybody. And yeah, so I mean, it was a dream from like literally my first year of college that I just had this dream that I would have loved to have designed and printed my own fabric. The interesting thing is, I can't draw at all. The fact that I'm a fashion designer is like, it's proof that if your dream is to be, you can be, because I cannot sketch, I cannot draw. I see it in my head, straight onto a piece of brown paper, straight onto fabric, and voila, it happens. And over the years, I asked the question and then I just ran away because it was always so expensive. And it really wasn't an option to a young designer because of the minimum quantities. And the minimum quantity thing is, in my next life, when I come back, I'm going to remove minimum quantities from the dictionary. Like, it's not. In Hayley's world, there's going to be no such thing as minimum quantities because it is extremely restricting. Like, it is one of those things that we all run away from. Anyway, fast forward to about 10 years ago, I was introduced to doing business in China. I had been going to Hong Kong for 15 years and I'd been doing business in Hong Kong, but I'd never really visited that. And also, the language barrier was always a thing. And I then was introduced to Guangzhou, which is a city in China that is just like, it's one of the most mind-blowing places. And I was introduced to the fabric market. And I had this realization in the fabric market that if you can dream it, you can have it. You just need to keep going until you find that one person who you resonate with, who is going to actually give you what you want. So just to put this into context, I was told by all the big fabric suppliers in South Africa that you can never do what I did in China, which was, I got somebody to print me exclusive fabric at 80 meters per print, per color,
Wow.
per print. Now, anybody who's in the industry knows we talk in 1,000, 1,500, 3,000 meters per color, per print is minimum quantities. So it cost me a little bit extra because he wasn't a huge factory. He was just a fabric merchant on the street in Guangzhou. I walked in, I was touching, I was feeling, I was like, oh my word, I've died and gone to heaven. This is incredible. Bearing in mind that his store was exactly 2 meters wide by 5 meters deep.
Wow.
Like, it's a tiny space with all these hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of fabric swatches hanging there.
What are the chances you would have found him?
And he was one of, I mean, I think it was a 15-kilometer walk, and there were just these hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these little stores. But the fabric was viscose lycra, it was puff printed, it was beautiful, it spoke to me, and I just got so excited. And I think he couldn't speak a word of English and I couldn't speak a word of Mandarin. But I think my energy, I work very much on energy. So for me, I really believe that my energy, he just got swept up in my excitement. And I had a lot of money. But I just was so excited. I was like, oh my word, oh my word, oh my word. Anyway, him and I sat with his laptop. He showed me the designs, and if it had like Chinese writing in it, I would point to it and I'd go, and he knew one word, cancel. I'm like, cancel. And he just like with a button, that, oh, I love that thing. I just erase it. And then I'd write for him on a piece of paper what I wanted written in there. So I used my initials of HJW, and then I have a thing, HJW, hope, joy, wish.
Yes.
So and he did that for me. And so it was his design, and he just kind of tweaked. But what the kick here is that he gave me the option to only do one roll of fabric, and his rolls of fabric were 80 meters. I was like, ooh. So I ended up designing with him a collection of five prints in 5 colors on a black background. And I paid him a lot of money in cash, because they only work in cash because they're not a big factory or whatever. So I went to the ATM and I drew my allowance that I'd put into this card.
All your fun money.
No, it was business money, but we had to physically draw the cash out and take like his package of cash to this man and give it to him, and he gave us, and I had to explain to him that for customs clearance in South Africa, I had to have a computerized invoice. He didn't know what I was talking about. Like all this.
He was going to handwrite it.
Yeah, it was all handwritten. Anyway, I got somebody to translate to him what I needed, and they are just ingenious. He was not going to lose the sale, because the deal was, unless you can give me a computerized invoice, I can't actually do the deal with you. He gave me a computerized invoice. It was all kosher, everything was perfect. Customs here accepted it. It had a Chinese, letterhead. It was all perfect. Anyway, and I received my fabric. So 2 things about that experience was I got my fabric, and most of the fabric was wonderful, and the quality was fine, and everything was good. However, I did receive 400 meters of a beautiful mix and match that I had great plans for, that when they were printing, it just shifted every half a meter, and there was like a ghosting. That's what it's called when the print shifts, is ghosting. And there was a ghosting, and I literally could not use it. I just could not.
And you couldn't return it either.
Of course you can never return it. You've paid for it to be shipped here. There's no way. And they know that. I don't believe that was done on purpose. And he obviously was not going to go and check every roll of fabric. I mean, that's not how it works. But that is the risk you run when you do it yourself.
Yes.
Because you go locally and you buy it locally and you unroll it and it's damaged, you take it back to your supplier.
Yes. And so what did you do with 400 meters of fabric, Hayley?
The weird thing, my customers loved the fabric so much that they were like, oh, I'll just have it for pajamas, or I'll just have it for loungewear. And I ended up I made a lot of gifts. Where I just said to people, listen, I want you to try. So actually it wasn't a gift. That's the wrong, because I would never give somebody a damaged gift. I said to them, listen, I'm trialing a new style. I've got this damaged fabric that I'm going to use for it. Will you trial the style for me and whatever? And then I got messages back, because remember, I see, you see, other people don't see. People would come back and say, what are you talking about? I love this. I've worn it out. I'm like,
it's not damaged. That's an art print you've got on there. Only you know that it was that it had the ghosting on it, because it wasn't your intention.
But I mean, I did lose a lot of money on that because obviously I couldn't recoup my money on those 400 meters. But
Absolutely.
I bought 5,000 meters. So
Okay,
I
so
mean,
you lost 10%.
yeah. So it wasn't a train smash.
So would it be safe to say that if somebody's planning to do something like that, they should kind of plan for a 10% margin for what I call shit happens, for stuff to go wrong?
Yeah, big time. Oh yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Like it's
Okay.
very, look, I must be honest that when I came back and I told a couple of my fabric merchants what nobody believed me. They
Okay.
like really didn't believe me because it isn't something, it was risky, but I had a good clearing agent. So,
Okay.
so here's a really interesting one about this exercise. So I go to China, I order the fabric, I pay for the fabric, I get on a plane, I come back to South Africa. I phone my clearing agent and I say to her, okay, here's the deal. This is what you need to go and fetch this fabric. She phones me a couple of days later. She says, Hayley, your guy that you bought from doesn't have an export license.
Yes.
He's just a local Chinese merchant. He doesn't export.
Yes.
I'm like, now, remember, I was a real novice at this. So I'm like,
Yes.
oh, I didn't know that. I said, so what do we do? She said, well, we now have to get him a once-off export license. I was like, I'm like, okay, we'll make it happen. Do it. It cost me $250 to make
Wow.
it happen. So
Wow.
those are the kind of things, like if you're
Okay.
going to do something, you need to say, I've got X amount of budget,
Mm.
and you can't spend the whole budget on the actual product. Like you need to
Yes.
have cash flow for eventualities because it's all a
Okay.
learning process when you do
Yes.
it the way I did it. Whereas if you go to a reputable factory and they will clear it and they will export it for you and they will clear it. But then you have to take a minimum of 1,500 meters per
Yes.
print. Mel, when you're a small designer, there's no way you're going to be able there's no way you can use
No.
1,500 meters. It's just
No.
not even an option.
Yes.
So, but I had a taste. I had a taste of what it felt like to have exclusive fabric and to be able to go out on social media and just share with gay abandon because I knew nobody could copy anything. Because, unfortunately, it's that thing. Like, I make this jacket, somebody rushes off to the Oriental Plaza, they buy the exact same fabric, they send somebody to buy the jacket or they buy it online and they copy it exactly and it's in the same fabric. With that experience, nobody could copy anything. So it is really a trump card, but it's stressful to try and do it like that. So fast forward, do you want me to fast forward to the next part or do you have another question? You're on mute. I tell you.
I'd love to hear where your printing journey goes from there, Hayley.
Okay. So then it kind of died down and I just had this dream. I had this dream. And then I was on Facebook and something popped up about an Epson color printer sublimation for polyester. And I was like, okay, well, I know that the fabric I'm using is that. I'm going to investigate. Anyway, I went on the journey and I watched the YouTube videos and I emailed the company. And then one day I just thought, no, like I had this feeling like it's going to happen. So I phoned Epson in South Africa and they put me onto the agents who actually sell the machines. So I say to my hubby who works with me in the business and my accountant, I've set up an appointment to go and visit a fabric printer. And they both looked at each other and went, oh, this is trouble. This is
Sounds expensive.
expensive trouble. It's gonna be. So we go also to a place called Chemisol
Yes.
in downtown Johannesburg.
Yes.
And the fabulously wonderful sales rep, his name is Graham. He is just one of the most delightful humans I've ever met in my whole life.
Yes.
We arrive and he's going to do the demonstration. So he says to me, do you have anything that you'd like me to print? So I'm like, yeah, actually, last night I took a photo of an amazing sunset, and the colors were so beautiful because they were like lilacs and pinks and grays. And I said, it was just so pretty. So he says, okay, we'll send it to me. And this was where, oh my word, Mel, oh my word, like the experience. I can still feel that tingle. I WhatsApped him the photo. He took the photo into Photoshop. He did a manipulation. He showed it to me, said, what do you think? I was like so blown away. So it wasn't now the sunset. It was now a manipulated image. It was a step and repeat pattern. But it was incredible because and I started to see the storytelling that was now involved from the sunset photo to the manipulation to onto a garment. And he said, okay, let's go. We went upstairs and he emailed the print to the printer from his laptop. And the next minute, this print just started printing onto paper. So with sublimation printing, it's onto paper first. Started printing. He then took it. He then took the paper and the fabric. I brought my own piece of white bonbon. And he pushed the paper and the fabric through and out on the other side. Voila. And I turned to my hubby and I said, you are in big trouble. This is, I have to. So he looks at me. He's a real voice of reason. And of course, the accountant is like straight and narrow. She's a complete voice of reason. So he looks at me and he says to me, okay, can we just take a deep breath here? He said, this is all fabulous, but did you see what Graham did with your WhatsApp photo?
Yes.
I said, yes, he put it in Photoshop. He said, yes. What do you know about Photoshop? I said, nothing. But I'm going to learn. He's like, you can't just learn Photoshop. It's a beast. You can't. He said, I promise you, babe, you can. I said, I promise you, you know me. If I want to do something, I will learn Photoshop. Anyway, fast forward, I buy the machine with zero Photoshop knowledge. And the machine, we take delivery of the machine in the January. He comes home from gym in the beginning of January and he says, I had an interesting conversation today. There's a young guy at gym with me who's a graphic designer. I said, bring him. Bring him because he's going to know Photoshop. I know he's going to know Photoshop. Anyway, he brings this delightful young man and who calls me ma'am. And I said, Craig, here's the deal. I don't need to know Photoshop. I just need to know how to get this photo from my iPhone or my iPad onto my laptop. So I had to buy a laptop. I only work on a phone and an iPad. I'm the Apple queen, the iPhone queen. So I had to get a laptop because the printer only responds to Windows. So you have to have a Windows. See, I know all these things now, Mel. I never knew.
You had quite a steep technology learning curve with this. You really had to learn. I mean, because I know if I set up a new laptop, that's like 3 or 4 weeks of my life gone trying to just figure out where everything is.
Yeah, I had to learn, and I had to learn things that were completely alien to me. So he sits with me and I said, here's the deal. iPhone photo to the laptop into Photoshop. I want 10 steps. That's all. And I will write them down. And he laughed at me because he's much younger than me, different generation. And he was I'm like, no, go back to the first one. And I would write, click top left-hand corner, file, open. That. Anyway,
yes.
I spent 3 days going 1 to 10, 1 to 10, 1 to 10, learning how to do it, got it, was able to send the photo to the printer. What I didn't realize was when I was emailing the photos, because I am an iPhone photographer, so I shoot in high resolution, I can save in high resolution, I have apps that can make high resolution. So I was emailing these, which I didn't realize because, as you said, I had no knowledge, and I was waiting 20 minutes for something to download, and I was going mad because I'm an instant gratification girl. I wanted to just drop onto the laptop, like I don't want to wait 20 minutes. And my hubby, who's a lot more tech savvy than me, said to me, listen, you are emailing yourself billboard size images. I'm like, what's that? So he got the tape measure and he showed me like what I was like. He laid the tape measure on the floor, and then I was like, okay. So then I was introduced to the most incredible thing called WeTransfer. So now it's very simple. I drop it into a WeTransfer file, I send it with WeTransfer, and I get it instantly. So that was a huge turning point for me. And I started printing my own fabric for my fashion collections, and I just fell in love with the process. But, and there is a very big but, it is a very, very expensive undertaking.
Okay.
And it is...
Even if you own your own machine?
Yeah. So I'll tell you...
How many years do you think it'll take you to pay off that machine?
No, I paid the machine off quickly because,
Okay.
I mean, the response to my prints was just phenomenal. So that there, they say it'll take, I don't know, I can't even remember if they said it was 3 years or 6 years or whatever. I paid it off quickly, but here are the little things. The paper that you print onto is 13 Rand a square meter. So not a meter, a square meter. The ink, there are 4 ink cartridges, they are liter cartridges, is 6,500 Rand.
And how many meters do you get with that?
No, you get, I mean, it does, look, it depends. My thing is, Mel, I do big, bold colors. So I do use more ink, and I am aware of it, and it does have an eco-printing thing. If you don't need the color to be wow, I want the color to be wow. So I do use more. But the base, okay, so before we go there, then you've got your fabric, whatever you're printing on, per meter, 40 Rand, 50 Rand, 60 Rand, 80 Rand, depends on what you're printing on. And then you've got electricity. And unfortunately, in this country, that is the most debilitating part of it, because it runs at 200 degrees. So it takes an hour to heat up. And then it runs at 200 degrees of heat. And I mean, it's got piping like that. It's a monster machine. So, and the printer prints a meter. It prints 10 meters an hour, the printer. Okay. That's not so heavy on electricity. The heat press, where the paper and the fabric go through, that prints roughly, give or take, a meter to a meter and a half per minute. So if you're doing 300 meters, let's just call it a meter a minute. It's a little bit different, but if you're doing 300 meters, you're talking 300 minutes. Now, I haven't done the calculation and worked out the electricity per minute, which I should really do. I haven't. That's what solo entrepreneurs, we kind of like, we just guess, we wing these things. but I have, but in the software of the program that I use for the print, there's a super smart cost estimator. So you put in what you would say. So if I say the electricity is costing me 100 Rand an hour, I will put in there 100 Rand an hour, fabric, whatever, and it works everything out, and it gives you a base price, and it's always very scary.
Okay. So what is very scary for people? So for the purposes of this conversation, I think designers have got 2 questions. One will be, how much is it going to cost me if I outsource it, and how much will it cost me if I buy the machine? So aside from the cost of the machine, because that they can easily research from a catalog, but the actual meter print cost, I think they'd really like to hear from the horse's mouth. How much is it costing you per meter, would you guess, to print?
On average, it's costing me 150 Rand to print.
Wow.
Yeah.
And does that include the cost of your cloth?
Yeah, that's fabric, ink.
Okay, so that's all in.
All in, yeah.
That's still quite expensive.
Yeah. So now, when you go to one of the printing guys and they're quoting 250, 300, 450 Rand, if you want to do small quantities, it makes sense why they're charging that, but it makes absolutely no business sense that you could ever afford to do that. And
Yes.
that is one of my great sadnesses about this, is that I know how long I dreamt of doing it. So I actually want a billionaire to hear this conversation. I want that billionaire to say, do you know what, Hayley Joy? How much are you earning a month? I'm going to pay for a year. I'm going to pay you your monthly salary plus, and I want you to just print for people for free.
Yes.
I want you to give young designers that opportunity. Like, I am really thinking about
What if you do it for
starting an
free?
initiative. Yeah, no, but I'm thinking about starting an initiative where I'm actually thinking about funding or gifting
Mm.
once every 3 months or something. I've got this thing in my mind because I get so many inquiries and I have to turn them away because, first of all, I can't switch the machine on to do 1 meter. So it can
Mm.
only happen when we're actually doing our printing, and we don't print every day. We batch print. So we'll print for like 6 hours because at the end of the print, you switch the machine off. It takes 3 hours for the machine to cool down.
Wow.
And the blanket, so there's a blanket, the blanket has to keep running. So the electricity is still running for another
Wow.
3 hours. That's
Okay.
why it's so expensive. Yeah.
Okay. 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 Lots of hidden things that you don't see. So, has it been worth it to you?
It's been worth it to me because I've lived my dream. It was a dream for so long that I wanted. And
Okay.
I had been, the funny thing is remember that I did it at 50. You know, I wasn't able to do this at 25 or 30. I did this at 50 years old. I had been saving a little bit of money every month for forever. So I
Mm-hmm.
came from a family where I had a mother who had this thing about saving for a rainy day. I'm a little different to that. I'm not so responsible. I'm a creative, so but
Mm.
I had the rainy day fund, and the interesting thing is that in the back of my mind, the rainy day fund was always going to be about something to do with fabric printing. Whether it was going to be buying a screen printer when I didn't know because I didn't know anything about it. When this came up, I had funds that I could use. So I was fortunate that I didn't have to borrow money for it. And that's a big thing also now because
So why didn't you go the screen printing route? Because you had money, you had a lump of money. You could have gone the screen printing route. Why did you not go that route?
I don't know. I couldn't answer that. I just knew that because maybe it was because of the fabric that I use. I use bonbon a lot. So because I do plus size fashion,
Mm.
I I have to be able to craft shape and craft garments way, way, way up. I mean, I make clothing up to a 7XL, a genuine 7XL.
Mm-hmm.
So I use Bonbon because I'm able to craft with it. I'm able to get shape. I'm able to get swing. So it was just, I mean, you asked me that and I couldn't answer you. I could only say to you, I never even thought about it. I just went
Okay.
straight. I think also because I'd seen that video and I was so blown away by this Epson video of this big news story that you could now do sublimation printing on polyester and heat pressing. And I was like, okay, well, this is for me. So I didn't really investigate anything else. I didn't.
Okay. 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 So you kind of chance, it was kind of a bit of luck and chance involved in the whole process also. That's a very
But also,
interesting insight.
also very important is that, this comes, and this is a whole other conversation that we could have, but I have to touch on it. Comes down to relationships.
Yes.
Had I not crossed paths with Graham
Mm.
from Chemisol, who is this incredibly passionate salesman and an incredible salesman, he
So Chemisol is a fantastic company. Do you know the history of that business?
no, I don't actually.
They've been around since the 1970s. And It's two brothers who run the business, and they're actually quite interesting. The one is an accountant, and when his business got too busy in the 1970s, he talked his brother Rudy into joining him in the business to come on the technical side of things. And Rudy had been working for the cancer organization
Okay.
up to then. So he stopped working for a charity and went into business with his brother. And when the two of them pooled their energies, they built this monstrous and amazing business. I discovered their ink in 1993 and have never wanted to work with anything else.
Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
really are an
No,
amazing company.
they, I mean, on top of how wonderful they are, they, they sales, they after sales.
Mm-hmm.
That's the secret. I can phone Graham, because sometimes what happens is I switch my laptop on, I click on the app thing, and it just won't open. I get on a shared screen call with Graham. He does whatever he needs to do, done and dusted. He always answers his phone, and if he doesn't answer his phone, he always responds to messages. The staff at and I think, to go back to your question about like why I did it, not knowing anything, I did it because they sold me the perfect dream with the
Okay.
perfect service.
Okay. Okay. That's an
And
awesome
business
endorsement
lesson.
for them.
Yeah, it's a
Yes.
great endorsement for them, but it's a very, very good business lesson as well.
Yes.
That you
Absolutely.
has to be about serving as well as selling. You can't just sell. Graham is a
Yes.
brilliant salesman, but he's a
Yes.
brilliant server as well. Brilliant. Very clever.
Yes. 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 And he's been with them for a long time.
Yeah, yeah. No, he's
They
amazing.
there's they don't have very high staff turnover there. You go there and you see the same faces year after year after year, and you get the same predictable, dependable service, and they've always got what you need when you go in there.
Yeah, no,
And
it's a good.
and and they're a mine of information. I've asked Rudy a million questions over the years, and he's always ready to help and support. So um,
Serving.
mm, they're a
Yeah.
great business. Okay, so Hayley, if there is a young designer out there, I realize now I haven't introduced myself.
Can you do that, please?
I probably should. So,
Yes.
for those of you who are watching, I am the other side of the spectrum from Hayley. I am analog in her digital world. So, I discovered lino block printing, which is essentially hand carved stamps that you use to print fabrics in 1993, and I fell in love with the process. And I've never seen any reason to work with anything else since then because the method is very direct, it's very cheap, it's easy to do. You can do small runs, you can do a variety of different things, you can change things up, you can print one or you can print five, and it's still really cost effective. Um, so for me, it's been my go-to for prints for more than 20 years. And I feel that it's a lot of people say to me, they discovered lino printing when they were kids, they did it in school, and they never looked at it again, and they don't realize just how versatile and how much potential there is in a simple handmade process. So I come at the conversation from the other end of the spectrum, and that's why kind of Hayley and I can have a conversation about prints in general from different perspectives that will hopefully help designers to decide which way you guys want to go with your designs and how you would like to make your bespoke fabrics. So, Hayley, for a young designer who is wanting to create their own bespoke fabrics, what would you say to them?
Sure. It's a hard one because I know the passion that exists to see it happen. So I worked with a young designer from UJ 2 years ago, and I printed her fabrics for her final fashion show. And that's when I started manifesting for the billionaire to want to just like support my dream of helping young designers
Yeah,
because I felt her through the whole process.
Yes.
Mel, it's a hard one because it's to find that company. So there's a company in Johannesburg called Westside Printers. There's Immaterial in Cape Town. I mean, there are a couple. I came across one on Facebook the other day called Fig Tree Printing. There are lots of people. And in actual fact, probably the best thing to do is for them to phone Graham, because Graham's the guy selling the printers and
Yes.
he knows guys who are printing.
Yes.
I think you have to manifest it, number one, and you have to do a lot of work. You have to find that company that will bond with you. And I think to try maybe with Westside and see what they charge, because there's two schools of thought here. Do you say, okay, I've got R1,000, I'm going to go and have 2 meters printed of my own design, and then I'm going to fall in love with it. I'm never going to be able to do it again because I'm not going to be able to afford, well, I'm not going to make money on it.
Mm.
Or do we start the conversation? Like, do you follow on this conversation with me and get somebody from Immaterial and get somebody from Westside on and have the conversation for them to break down the pricing? Because it doesn't help for us to go, oh, they're all so expensive. I understand why they're so expensive. They've got 10 times the setup that I've got. They've got 10 times the electricity.
Mm.
How do we find a way to support young designers and inspire them to create their own prints, because they are living in this incredible digital world where they're able to take a photo, play in an app. Most of them know Photoshop, but you don't need Photoshop. I don't produce anything. This canvas behind me is a manipulated image of autumn leaves. I took a photo of autumn leaves. I took it and I bounce around a myriad of apps and play until I like what I see. And I then sent that to a Jetline printer and they printed it for me. So
Okay.
that's how doable it actually is. Of course, it all costs money,
Mm.
but the phone and the app, I mean, that you've got in your hand, so you can play with that. I think an important thing to do as well, if you are dreaming about designing your own collection. So again, two things. If you are physically designing it yourself, Instagram. You have to start Instagramming the process and not just the final product. Like,
Mm.
take people on a journey with you. Build a tribe of people that like are engaged with this whole print build. Like when I share the photo of the autumn leaves and edit one and edit two or manipulate, not even edit, manipulation one, manipulation two, I then ask my engaged tribe, what do you think? Which one do you like? And then based on the feedback, I then will print it and then I'll do a reveal and everybody's like, wow. And I mean, I've sold 5 paintings. I'm not a painting artist. And I'm suddenly now finding this space. So if you think about where my printing journey's taken me, it hasn't just been, I haven't limited it to just printing on fabric.
Mm.
I'm able to do like a whole bunch of things now. And that's what's so interesting about the process. These young designers, or you're actually not even a young designer. Let's say you're 60 years old and you've had this photo of an aloe and you've done something incredible with it. And you just know that printed on bed linen or wallpaper or a mug or like, the world is so open to amazing stuff happening. I think the pricing of all of this is restrictive, but if you start small, I have these, they're very simple. I'm just going to show you the front. These were some white iceberg roses that I took a photo of, very boring.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And I played in an app that allows me to paint them. So I painted them and I've got 5 different colors. This little journal of 50 pages cost me, I think it was 25 Rand to print it.
Mm.
That's not that expensive. It's not a fancy quality. From a resale point of view, I've upped the quality. Like
Yes.
I didn't love that, whatever. But I've done journals, I've done cards, And then the cards they're glossed, so they're a beautiful finish, so they're more expensive. But I mean, you can have basic cards printed for £2.50 a card. Jetline printers or any printing. I mean, there are lots of printing places.
Mm,
You can print them actually if you have a decent printer.
mm,
You can buy decent paper. You can print them yourself. I'm not sure if you're going to get them at £2.50 because the
mm,
ink and that again is expensive. But there are so many options. And if you start there, and then as you say, like what you do, so yours now becomes a different option. You
mm,
might change the way that you see your future in printing. But your lino prints that are hand cut, if
mm,
you create a mandala, I'm playing in a mandala app at the moment that is just it has blown my mind completely. If you created a basic mandala and you were able to cut that out as a lino print, and
mm,
you were or your in your and you've got the books and the courses, and so invest in the book and the course to
mm,
learn how to do it. That's a whole different avenue. And
mm,
then when you've built that up into something, you
mm.
might then decide, I'm either going to buy a screen print or I'm going to buy a sublimation printing. There's so many options. I think for me, the sad part is that a young designer decides they're going to print fabric and they pick up the phone and they phone any one of these companies. And unfortunately, the person on the other end of the phone is just answering the phone.
Mm.
They haven't been trained to ask the correct questions. So if I was doing it and if you were doing it, this is how we would do it. We would train the person answering the phone to ask. Yeah. And the five questions would be who are you? Where are you at in your journey? And as the owner of the company, you should maybe have something set up where a young designer can experience it.
Mm,
I know that it's time consuming and doesn't make great business sense. But if we don't nurture that brilliant talent from a young age, it's never going to manifest itself. I mean, my talent only manifested itself at the age of 50. Just
mm.
think of all the wonderful things I could have been doing from the age of 20. But yeah, you know what, Mel? It comes down to one thing and one thing only, and sadly, it is applicable to so many things. It's all about price. It's all
Mm,
about money. It is a very expensive because if I was working on a 30% markup or 50% markup, I
mm,
mean, the minimum I would be having to sell those fabrics for would be 225 to 250 rand a meter.
mm.
It
So
doesn't make
would you only then really recommend that a designer use it either as a trim or only if they're doing bespoke garments at a premium price?
I think bespoke, yeah. I don't think you can just do like casual. I think it's got to be where you're using it bespoke until you get to a point where you have choice or where you can start upping quantity. Because
And
when you start upping quantity, obviously it gets cheaper. The more you print, the cheaper it is.
so maybe it's an opportunity for designers to get together then. Maybe if 5 designers got together and each ordered 80 meters
Yeah,
from a supplier, then they could leverage those economies of scale and get it like the 400-meter price.
yeah, yeah.
But then they'd need to work together.
Yeah, they would. Mel, can I ask you a favor? I mean, I know this is live.
Absolutely.
I have to actually just go and see who's buzzing my door. Will you just keep
Okay.
the audience entertained and I'll be back?
Absolutely.
Sorry,
Absolutely.
guys.
Absolutely.
I
Off
do
you go. No, absolutely. Off you go. So, for those of you who are watching, maybe you'd be interested in learning a little bit more about lino printing. And some of you might be saying, well, I learned lino printing at school. How can this possibly be something that could be valuable in the fashion space? Now, I have been doing lino printing on textiles since 1993. And in 2005, I actually took it to the catwalk at SA Fashion Week in a number of collections with designers like black coffee and stone cherry, sun goddess, and those kinds of brands. So I have certainly proven that lino prints can go all the way to the catwalk. And I personally believe that they are very, very useful. Um, and there are a number of ways that I've used them personally that you can't use screen printing or digital printing for. So, for example, we went into a designer's studio once, and he had a whole pile of kind of stock that hadn't sold. It was dead stock, essentially. It was his less um, popular garments that had been on the rail for some years and had gone nowhere. So he pulled them all off and he put them in a big pile in front of us and he said to us, okay, do your worst. And we applied a series of different patterns and designs to these finished garments. Now, these were garments that had bones and shape and a lining and a zip in the back and all of that. And because we were printing with soft rubber lino stamps, we were able to print across a lot of the garment construction. And we were able to do some really interesting prints that went across seams and across zips. We were able to create focal points and borders on things that were very plain, just to give them a little bit of pop, so that they had a new life. So lino prints are not only useful at the beginning of the process to create bespoke textiles for your brand, but they're also useful at a later stage in the process because you can then go and retrofit finishes to garments that maybe aren't selling that well to try to spruce them up a bit and maybe give them a second chance on the rail with a different look. So I found that a very, very useful way of using lino prints. And if any of you are watching and you are interested in learning more about the process, you will find my book, 50 Silk Scarves, with Metz Press that I published in 2013. And in that book, you will find a large section about lino printing that you can read through. So if you contact Metz Press, or if you go into Exclusive Books or any of your bookstores and you ask for 50 silk scarves, you will find my book where I have a whole section dedicated to lino block printing. And I actually show you how to print on silk scarves on the book. Then, if you are interested, I also have a YouTube channel. Sadly, my little thing at the bottom is cut off. It says at Dye and Prints. So if you go to youtube.com/dye and prints, that's DYEANDPRINTS, you will find a wide selection of videos that teach you more about lino block printing. So if you would like to learn more about the process, you can either learn from
Back.
my books or from my YouTube channel. So if you look out for that at Dye and Prints, then you can learn about the lino prints. Welcome back, Hayley.
You're never going to believe what I'm going to tell you now.
What?
My neighbors next door,
Yes.
I think they're either burning leaves or it looks like the whole neighborhood is on fire. So
Okay.
my poor helper was buzzing because she thought the house was you and I live on.
I'll
So
forgive you. I'll forgive you for running for that one.
I mean, it's crazy. I walked out and it's just like we are absolutely swamped in smoke.
Okay.
Crazy.
Okay. You're not
Okay.
really burning down though.
No, not us.
Okay. Okay. Fantastic.
Okay, so I'm back. Thank you for filling in for me.
No, it's a pleasure. I got to say some of the things that I'd possibly omitted earlier because I'm so interested in what you have to say that I'm less interested in what I have to say. So okay, so I think you've actually we had one question at the start of the whole thing which I forgot to include in the conversation. Thea Teron asked, "What is the cost and impact, and is it worth spending the money?" So I think you've answered that for us quite nicely, Hayley. So it's worth spending the money if you want it enough.
I think so. I do. I
Okay.
mean, listen, I wanted it so badly, and I went out and I did it for myself. And I think you have to find a way. Like, if you're a really young designer now, and it's what you really want, start saving. So buy less fancy things and put that money away, and get to a point where you have a deposit, because at your age, you're not going to be able to finance it unless you have help. I do hope that down the line, like something like the DTI could start something. I mean, I know that you can get funding.
Mm,
So you can definitely get funding to buy a printer, a
mm,
press and a printer, or whatever. But you have to then, the thing for me is, when you finance it, the pressure to have it printing 24/7, to pay back that is,
yes.
and I know there was a figure that somebody bought one and the repayment was 13,000 Rand a month.
Okay.
It's a lot of money. It's a
Yes.
lot of money when you're starting out. So, and the pressure then to how much do you have to produce and sell to get that 13,000 every month, because you might print the fabric now, make it next month, and only sell it in month 3.
Yes.
How are you actually, like, it's a lot. There's a lot to think about. But I
Yes.
liked your suggestion before I bailed out on you.
Okay.
I like the suggestion around getting together.
Mm,
And actually, the only thing is that then it's not your exclusive design. It's perhaps a collaborative design, but
mm.
it still gives you that option that only 5 of you in the whole country or the whole world have
Yes.
that design. So
Well,
I'm a
I
very good suggestion.
the reason I was thinking that is because I spoke to a digital printer the other day who will do 100 meters, but you can, in that 100 meters, select as many designs as you want to.
That's brilliant. Yeah, I mean, that's
So,
sure. So you did
yes,
five,
so if you,
five
if
20-meter prints.
yes, although, so I always do some worst case scenario planning around things like this, and I can see what would happen. You know, the 5 of you would order it, and then something would go wrong on one designer's design, and then there'd be a rub. 4 of them got what they ordered, and one
Yeah,
didn't.
yeah,
And then the urgency, because then it's going to depend on who's dealing with the service provider. The urgency to then get that fabric replaced is going to be uh, is going to. Do you feel that designers should also have kind of like agreements in place with the printers, in terms of, you know, if I supply you with my fabric and you print it and you have ghosting on the print, that you're then liable for it?
definitely. I think you have to first and foremost find out what their accountability offer is. Like,
Okay.
exactly that. So if the fabric ghosts, do they replace it? But now here's where the next kick comes in. Because let's say you bought the last 50 meters of whatever,
Mm,
and they mess up your
mm,
50.
mm,
Now, let's say you've pre-ordered. So you've designed it on your laptop. You can see what it looks like. If you're super smart in Photoshop, you can actually put it onto a real person, and you can show it off, and you pre-sell it. And
mm,
then you go have it printed, and then there's a disaster, and now you've pre-sold. Mel, the stress involved, I promise you, you will go and actually become a garden mower, or like, the stress around that kind of thing. So there's
mm.
so many things to take into account. Like, does the printer tell you that the fabric actually shrinks? No,
Ah.
because polyester should never shrink. But
Uh,
at 200 degrees of heat, there is a certain amount of shrinkage. Also, how tightly are they feeding the fabric into the press? How tightly is the press pulling the fabric? Because if it's pulling, then it's stretching the fabric. And then how hot are they actually? Well, it's not so much the heat, it's the speed. So are they printing it at 80, or are they printing it at 72? Because at 72, there's going to be a different feel to your fabric as opposed to 80. So the
okay.
faster it goes through, the less change there is to the composition of the fabric.
Ah,
I'm
okay.
going to go on forever about
So,
it.
so, so that shrinkage is variable. from process to process, business, printing supplier to printing supplier, roll to roll.
Yeah. And does the printer, maybe they just have an allowance for it and they don't actually tell you, and you get, I mean, we have definitely had it where I've printed 10 meters and it's come out at 9 meters 60, 40 centimeters. You're paying for that 40 centimeters.
Yes.
Work out what 40 centimeters is on 225 Rand. It's a lot of money.
Yes.
You know, so there's so many of those things. But I don't want to put forward all the negative stuff either, because the joy and the wonder of seeing your own fabric printed, I think, far outweighs all the tears I've cried.
That's wonderful news. That's wonderful news. I think that's all that people really need to hear, is from somebody who's been through all the heartache of the process and is able to say, you know what, it was difficult, but it was still worth it.
Yeah, and funny things like the printer. I always say the printer is a machine. Like, really, it doesn't have a personality. Well, my printer does. If I sit watching it, it prints beautifully.
Yes.
If I leave, so you're supposed to be able to feed it in. You're printing 30 meters. That's going to take 3 hours. Goodbye. No. You can come back, and I have no clue why. Every 60 centimeters, every 90 centimeters, every 1.5 meters, there'll be a white line. Suddenly, one of the heads has got dirty or something like that. That's the paper wrecked. But sometimes what happens is, let's say you leave the room for whatever and you come back, it can do it and then it can go back to being normal again. You don't see that. You then print. And if you're not actually, I mean, my hubby and I do the printing ourselves. We don't take any chances because it is a beast of an operation. And every meter that you mess up is messed. And it's a lot of money. But that's the advantage if you're having it done and there are procedures in place. But I agree that you should know what the comeback policy is.
Okay.
And how do they compensate you for the fabric that they mess up? Like, how does that all work? Because those are very important questions to have. If you supply your own fabric and they mess your fabric up, do they pay you back for the fabric? I don't know. I wouldn't know that, because that I've never gone down that road. But yeah, that's a very real question.
So when I used to mass produce tie-dye for the industry, I used to say, because tie-dye is variable.
Yeah.
You know, there's some of it's variable, but if there was more than a variance of more than 10% of the total order, I would buy the order off the customer if it wasn't what they wanted.
Sure.
So twice in my life, I actually bought garments that I didn't need from customers because I'd missed the brief so completely. Or mess them up, or things gone wrong, you know. So it's about ownership. But I have also worked with CMT companies who've completely wrecked my fabric and left me, you know, they didn't have any systems in place, and I didn't have any systems in place, and then I just lost hundreds of meters of cloth. So I think that it's quite an important conversation to have with fashion designers, that if they are using service providers, they must have service level agreements in place.
And I think the important conversation is around them understanding the questions that they need to ask. And two very important ones is, if I supply the fabric and you wreck my fabric, do you compensate me? And wreck, there are different ways of wrecking. You know, they could say, if there's a slight iffiness on the print, I am particularly difficult to please because I want perfection, and I have a very, very, very straight eye, and I have an eye that will pick up a dot. So I have a problem in that, you know, a service provider will go, but I mean, this really isn't that bad. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not what I ordered. And the thing is, when humans are involved. So even though there's a machine pushing the print and the fabric through, there's a human on one side and a human on the other side. Are they pulling it? Did they feed it in straight? I mean, we've had it with chiffon where we've fed the chiffon. So we've torn the chiffon and had a straight line, and we feed together. So I feed on one side, hubby feeds on the other side, and we feed it in. And we fed it in, and we thought we've done a great job. It's gone to production, and we've lost we've lost half a meter. Every time she has to cut something, she's got to tear it to get it, and it's not printed straight. So things that I've learned also, very important, be cognizant of stripes and designs with definite lines and that kind of thing, because if you don't, and it's very difficult. I mean, I can say that with conviction, I can tell you, as perfect as we think we are, we still struggle to feed the fabric in evenly from the word go. And especially if it's stretch fabric. If it's a cotton, it's a different story because it's not moving around. But stretch fabric, you've got all this movement. Chiffon and mesh, I mean, they dance all over the and then you go to cut the garment and it's not running 100% with the selvage, it's a problem. So those are the kinds of things that, as a designer, when you're choosing a design, choose a lovely, mad, all over.
Doesn't have to be straight.
No, don't do that to yourself, because I learned the hard way with that. I had huge problems with that. And also designing things that, like, especially if you're doing paneling, like, make sure that you leave, when you design your design in Photoshop, make sure you leave enough space at the top, above the head and below the feet, for variances.
Yes. That's fantastic advice. Thank you, Hayley. So I see we've been talking for a whole hour. And
you are dangerous. We could talk forever. We should do a marathon now. We should just do like a 24-hour marathon and see where it takes us.
Well, I think we've given the young designers who might watch this at a later stage a lot of really great value. So thank you for that. Thank you for your time today. I appreciate it so very much.
Thank you, Mamel. Always lovely to be with you.
Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up with that, and I look forward to seeing all of you at a later stage.
Yay.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.